So we're going to go ahead and open it up to questions. Go ahead, Maggie.
Hi, Mr. Secretary. Thanks for holding this today.
Yes.
I wanted to ask about a situation from 2023 involving a non-citizen in Campbell County that your office found to have registered in Wyoming and to also have voted in Wyoming. I was wondering if you were ever given an explanation from the Campbell County attorney as to why no charges were brought.
Not a satisfying one. And, I brought here our letter on August 17th of 2023. When we found this, we immediately notified the county clerk and then also the county attorney. And I've yet to really receive a satisfying explanation on why that action hasn't been taken.
Can you clarify what the explanation was, other than it being an unsatisfying one?
My recollection is that it was unsatisfying. Okay. Yes. There was really no explanation on it. Yes, go ahead.
Yes. So on these, kind of speaking kind of more holistically, as far as the voter kind of tightening the regulations on some of these issues that you're talking about, how will your office still try to work to ensure that legal voters are still able to vote and be able to do what they need to do to be able to cast a vote? Yes,
that's pivotal, Leo. And we have to make sure we achieve that balance. Other states have done all of these things, and it has worked. Now, citizenship, because of the NVRA exemptions in all but 6 states, proof of citizenship has only been applied to state and local elections, so it will be historic in that way. But in terms of administration, it's been achieved similarly in states that have done it, and it has worked. We've got to achieve that balance, and we talk about that a lot with the clerks, with legislators, but I think we're there in this election integrity reform agenda that we're putting forward for the 2025 legislative session. Yes?
Yes, I was wondering...
What's the publication?
Yeah, Cap City News.
Oh, great.
Yes.
Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. I was wondering, you said yesterday you had a meeting with the clerks. Can you tell me what sort of feedback you received from the clerks regarding these proposals that you're going to...
Well, I want to be careful not to speak for them. I want to lead with that. Clerk Irvin and I have a long history of dialogue and working on issues. It's talked about on voter ID. One of the key transition points was when Clerk Irvin became the chairman of the County Commissioners Association. We had a very good dialogue. I think they're continuing to look to review the language and think about what Leo just talked about and getting that tension right, that balance right. I love that word, balance. And we're engaging with them on that. And we did on our residency rule. I mean, we had 5 meetings by the end of the promulgation of the residency rule in 2023. And we anticipate doing the same for this 2025 legislative session, in addition to that healthy colloquy that happens in committees that I look forward to. Thanks. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to see if, we're talking about voter protection today. I wanted to see if there are any laws you'll be paying attention to outside of that in the upcoming legislative session, maybe thinking about protecting Wyoming's energy or transgender athletes in sports. I think those are 2 big hitters.
Well, thank you for that question, and appreciate that. I continue to want to put forward a complete conservative legislative package. And I think it's something that we need to get done for the 2025 legislative session. We need to protect women's sports. We need to expand that to colleges. We saw that amendment on the original bill was a huge weakness, and I think there is an effort to place that into state law. We need to ban sanctuary cities and counties. We did a video on this. When I saw the article drop about once again, an example of things that we said were happening, and the media said this isn't happening, it never happens. TV doesn't do it. I'll exempt out TV largely, but the TV locals, but it's largely print. And I brought 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, a ban on sanctuary cities and counties. And every single time, the print media said, oh, this never happens here. It will never happen here, ever. And here we saw it is happening in Teton County, and we discussed Teton County and Albany County and the potential for this happening. And here we have them not complying with ICE detainers, and we did a video talking about and calling for the need for the legislature to bring this to the finish line, banning sanctuary cities and counties. And I'm very excited that Representative-elect Guggenmoss, I talked with him, he is bringing that bill. It's really thinking about the language and continuing to improve that language. And that's what I love about this process. And I saw it on voter ID. Every year that bill got better and better and better on the language. And that's why now we continue to see improvements on voter ID. That's very important. Taking on ESG. I mean, we've had so many proposals since 2018 to take on the woke attacks on every single one of our core industries. Coal, oil, gas, ag. They're all under attack by this effort by Wall Street to deny capital to investors who want to grow in these sectors, in these areas. And without that investment, we're not going to be able to reach our state, our full God-given potential. And I talked about earlier how I've been reflecting a lot over the last few months, because it was 10 years ago I first put my name forward to run for office in the state legislature in East Casper, and came up a little bit short in that election. But one of the things that got me involved was that I was really bothered by the fact that governmental action was preventing Wyomingites, preventing Americans from reaching our full God-given potential. And when we're not able to access the natural resources, the coal, oil and gas, the ag resources, the soda ash is under attack too, that we've been blessed with, we're not able to reach that full potential. Now, that feeds into another key issue for me, which is getting this coal export terminal done and being able to access markets. And the governor has a key opportunity now with the second Trump administration, because once again, as we had in the first Trump administration, the federal delays in permitting are going to go away on January 20th. And so now all you have is West Coast states, Washington State, Oregon, California. I mean, you think back to the 2010, we had 5 export terminals being proposed. None of them have gotten done because of the blocks from these 3 West Coast states. You get one of them done, you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars in economic growth. You're talking about thousands of jobs for Wyomingites. And we have an opportunity now, and it's a clear interstate commerce clause violation. With the Trump administration, second Trump administration allowing that permitting, the only block will be those states. And the big problem in that first Trump administration with state action, Trump was on board with getting this done. President Trump was on board, but unfortunately we had Governors Meade and Gordon that were not speedy in bringing that interstate commerce clause litigation. And when that dithering delay happened, it got caught up in COVID. And then here we were at the end of 2020, and basically the case became moot because the coal export terminal proposal in Washington State, they went broke. And so, you know, it really, life is about, in many ways, one of the things in politics is timing. Timing is so important. And I go back to that 2019 session when Gordon had just been sworn in. Meade had done nothing on protecting Wyoming's interstate commerce clause interests. I went ahead and brought a bill, right in 2019 we got it done, where we said that if the Attorney General, and we're one of the few states that has an appointed Attorney General, if the Attorney General is not going to bring litigation to protect Wyoming's interstate commerce clause rights, the legislature would do it on the behalf of the citizens of Wyoming. And Governor Gordon vetoed it and said, oh, we're going to get this done. It's going to take us a few months. We're going to get it done. He proceeded to wait an entire year. There was no filing until January 2020. And 1 month before the legislative session, where we were very clear that we were going to bring the bill back through, and this time we wouldn't adjourn so we could override the veto. And then, of course, COVID happened. Timing is so important. We need to have a strategy, federal and state and local, to get this terminal done and to the finish line. I think we need to look at riders and must-pass pieces of legislation. That's a federal approach in terms of requiring that permitting. We need to look at protecting our Interstate Commerce Clause rights. So that's very near and dear to my heart, as well as bringing that to the finish line. We've got to get controls and expenditure. I could talk for a long time about that and worked on that a lot in the legislature. There are so many bills over the last 8 years that I think are going to be discussed. Standing for constitutional challenges, that was a bill we brought in 2019 after a case said that citizens didn't have standing to bring constitutional challenges, and that is really a problematic precedent. And so we need to assert that in state law. And then, of course, school choice. I mean, we've seen that that's something where we're behind on, and we really need to advance the ball in that common sense, conservative, those reforms. Yes?
This is more of a clarifying question. So will there just be one bill coming to the 25 general session regarding some of your legislative proposals, or are there going to be more than one? I'm just curious about the details of the bill, what that's going to.
Yeah, great question. You know, I am personally, my recommendation, and I think where this has been heading as we have worked a lot on this over the past year, and again, maybe Representative Knapp, if he wants to weigh in on this, but I really believe in single subject, germaneness, all of the constitutional provisions that are pivotal for maintaining our process. So I really think these are going to be separate pieces of legislation rather than an omnibus approach, which I've always considered to have constitutional issues. And that's really the approach that in our discussions that has been taken. Can I add anything on that?
Yes, I would just say as conservatives, what you'll find is we'll be looking at each segment. You talked about energy, but we'll look at each segment as a policy with multiple bills that deal with that particular policy. And I think that will ensure that over time, even, maybe not over one session, but we will get to specific goals that we have for energy and things like that. So I know there will be a press conference also in January, on January 7th at 2 p.m. That will go over some of those policies with leadership.
We've got time for one more question.
One other thing I wanted to mention too before we do that, the SAVE Act at the federal level. You mentioned I wanted to bring in that proof of citizenship at the federal level, which there was an attempt to bring that through in 2024. Unfortunately, that did not go through. That's another piece of legislation we're going to work on at the federal level with the federal delegation. One more, go ahead.
Yeah, so what would be your next steps, maybe as secretary, if some election bills do not get passed out of the legislative session or Governor Gordon maybe cracks out his veto pen?
Well, you know what? I think back to when I was a member of the legislature and I bring a conservative bill in the House, and I look at the bill and I say, I think we only have 6 votes for this bill on the floor. And it's totally different now. I mean, than there's been a huge change, and I look at conservative bills now, and you read the text and look at that and say, there's probably 35 votes at least on the House side for this bill. And so we can think about all these potential sort of roadblocks. And one of the things I learned in the first sessions is to not get deterred by that. I mean, voter ID, we knew that it had obstacles in 2018 and 2019, but we kept working on it and always try to view it as sort of a providential path towards the goals that we want to achieve. for whatever policy you're trying to put forward. And I've tried to emphasize that as I talk to new members. I love talking to new members, love talking to the citizens, the neighbors that I represent, is to not get discouraged and to not think about all the roadblocks, because you have to take things one at a time as you go through the process and take each step as you go through. So I'm very excited about this. I know there's, some people say, well, this could happen or that could happen, but I can tell you I'm so energized. Always have had a lot of energy, but I think I'm tip top in terms of the energy that I have right now for this. And we're working really diligently on these pieces of legislation, on these proposals, and that's how to bring something to the finish line, is to do all you can. You want to say something first? Sorry.
Sorry, I don't mean to take over your press conference here.
Yeah, no.
But as conservatives, we've already been successful, right? What we did was peeled back layers of government to be transparent to the people. And I think that's what's happened on the national level too. What you saw Trump do was peel back the layers so that people could just see what their government was doing, what was happening. And what's become of that is a groundswell. The people have taken over again. It is we the people. So in this session, if we put forward long-term solutions, if we put forward good legislation in the House, all eyes are on the Senate and all eyes are on the governorship to say, are we doing the people's work? That's what we feel we're mandated by, not conservatism, not our own bills, not our agenda. The people have spoken nationally and they've spoken in the state. They've cleaned the House, and now all eyes are on the Senate and what the governor does with legislation that comes through. Thank you.
One more, back to William's question. I knew there would be one other thing, property tax reform. This is something that we need to bring to the finish line. And once again, we were way ahead of the ball game on this. 2021 brought the CAP bill, saw what was happening in 2020 in Trona County with 3,000% increases on Casper Mountain. It's just outrageous. And so we said, look, we're going to bring a CAP bill. We got to get a handle on this. And unfortunately, it didn't get through the process. Individuals said, the media said that, well, this is not going to continue, and had excuse after excuse, and we saw it did continue. And here we are now with these 40, 50% year-to-year increases on average, in a huge percentage of counties. And that's why, I think about property tax reform. You have bills that work through the current system, which have often been called relief, and then you have reform, in other words, thinking about changes to the system as a whole. And from the relief perspective, these bills to provide for that exemption, which unfortunately were vetoed by the governor, it's just really outrageous, in my opinion. And there was a huge majority on that bill, the exemption bill, SF 54, which was a bill in revenue. It was on the Revenue Committee in 21. It kind of came up with that concept of exempting out a percentage of the assessment. And that had been a bill that went through committee in 22 when I was still a member, and the 23 session it failed in the Senate Revenue Committee, and then 24 it received over 2/3 of the legislature, and the governor vetoes it. I mean, that is the sort of relief package, in addition to rolling back the state mills to before this enormous appreciation, that 2019-2020 period. I know there's an option to roll back the county mills, which would go through the county commissions. That's sort of the relief bucket. And then in the reform, you think about things like acquisition value, moving to a system that is more transparent and doesn't have this approach that really doesn't yield. Is just shown to have tremendous problems. So I'm very excited about the potential for property tax relief, reform. We need to bring that through. That's another thing that we worked on, and the media said there's never going to be an issue, and blah, 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 and we've seen there is an issue there. And so it's time now for action to be taken. We'll go ahead and take one more, Leo.
Yeah, thank you. There was something you had brought up there. I just want to clarify and make sure I fully understand it. You were saying that you can't do hand count audits, I believe, or recounts of voting machine election results. But then how was Weston County able to do what they did when they had kind of the screw up there about a month ago?
Well, that was, first of all, our office caught that. And we immediately called the Weston County clerk, who did not answer that evening. We then called the sheriff, Sheriff Colvard. Glad I have the sheriff's number. I don't have every sheriff's number, but the Weston County sheriff, I do have his number. And he picks up at 10 p.m. and says, we agree, we need to ascertain the whereabouts of the county clerk. We got the county clerk on the phone that evening. She denied that there was any issue. We said, look, let's talk in the morning. We already had a theory about what had happened with the ballot alignment. The printing of the ballots is a duty of the county clerk, and the improper ballots had been used. There had been 3 different versions printed, and the improper ballots had been used, which is a duty of the county clerk. And so then we engaged in basically a 48-hour colloquy about how we needed a hand audit. And that hand audit ultimately happened at the county canvassing board on Friday. We brought in the Attorney General on that. The answer to your question is that the county canvassing board under current state law can do that examination. We were talking about in the context of recounts, but the canvassing board was the ones that conducted that pursuant to our negotiation, our discussions, and eventually, at first it looked like it wasn't going to happen, but then there was a turning point on Thursday, the day before the meeting of the county canvassing board, and we were able to get that to the finish line. And while it was a moment of disappointment, I think our office's conduct in addressing that issue and that those problems from the Weston County clerk, I think we handled that very well. And we ultimately got the correct count. And that's what was certified. And I think it's very important we're very clear on that. Some of the media reports, in my opinion, were not clear on this point. The counts were corrected based on a hand audit of the ballots, and that's what was put forward to the state canvassing board that met that following Wednesday. So thank you very much, appreciate it. You know how to contact me. I think everybody, for further follow-up questions, I'm around to continue to handle those, and look forward to this 2025 legislative session. Merry Christmas, and if there's anything I can do